All right, welcome everyone to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep, literally, into the systems that keep you alive and kicking, the respiratory and circulatory systems.
It's fascinating stuff, and you've gathered a really impressive set of sources here. Everything from the tiny air sacs in your lungs all the way to that powerful pump we call the heart, and even how our bodies deal with waste.
Exactly. So the mission for this deep dive is to really break down how these systems work together. How we get that oxygen in, get rid of the carbon dioxide, move nutrients around, and clean up the waste. We want to make this complex biology clear, relevant, and hopefully even a little fun.
I like it. Fun biology.
Ah.
And speaking of fun, what better place to start than with the very air we breathe, right? That's the respiratory system in action.
Absolutely. So when we talk about the respiratory system, what's its main gig? What's it all about?
At its core, it's all about gas exchange. Getting that oxygen into your bloodstream and that carbon dioxide out, it's the fundamental process of breathing.
Right. And this exchange, this crucial back and forth, happens mainly where...
Well, the real action takes place in these tiny little sacs in your lungs called alveoli. They're like clusters of grapes, and they're surrounded by these equally tiny blood vessels. That's where the magic happens.
So let's break down the journey of air. When you take a breath, where does it go?
All right, so picture this. You take a breath, and the air enters through your nose or your mouth.
And I'm guessing the nose is the preferred route, right? Because of that incredible filtration system we have in there.
You got it. The nose is like this amazing air purifier. It's got these tiny hairs called cilia that trap dust particles. And then there's the mucous membrane, which traps even more gunk, warms and moistens the air, and even fights off bacteria.
It's like a welcome mat and security checkpoint all rolled into one.
Exactly. So after the nose or mouth, the air goes down the pharynx. It's a passageway for both air and food. Then it hits the larynx, where your vocal cords are.
So that's where the voice comes from.
You know it. And from the larynx, it travels down the trachea, which we also call the windpipe. Finally, the trachea branches into two tubes, one for each lung. And that's how the air gets to those alveoli we talked about.
So inhale, and the air makes its way down. Exhale, and it goes back up the same way, carrying all that carbon dioxide with it.
Precisely. But there's another crucial player in all of this. Diffusion.
Diffusion? That sounds a bit technical. What exactly is that?
It's actually simpler than it sounds. It's all about things moving from where they're crowded to where there's more space.
Yeah.
In this case, we're talking about oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules.
So in the lungs, there's more oxygen in the air than in the blood. So the oxygen moves into the blood, and there's more carbon dioxide in the blood than in the air. So it moves out of the blood and into the air to be exhaled.
Right. Spot on. It's all about reaching a balance. Now, this whole breathing thing, it's not just happening on its own. It's powered by muscles.
Right, the diaphragm, that's the big one, right?
The diaphragm is the star of the show. It's a dome-shaped muscle under your lungs. When you inhale, it contracts and flattens, giving your lungs room to expand.
And then when you exhale, it relaxes and moves back up, helping push the air out. It's like a bellows.
Perfect analogy. And all of this is controlled by the respiratory center in your brainstem, the medulla oblongata. It's happening automatically without you even thinking about it.
It's amazing how much is going on without us even realizing it.
Absolutely. And, all this talk about the respiratory system, it's easy to take it for granted. But there are things that can go wrong, things that can disrupt this delicate balance.
Like asthma, right. The sources you gave really emphasize that it's a serious condition.
Yeah, asthma is a chronic lung disease that makes breathing difficult. The airways get inflamed and constricted, making it hard to get air in and out.
And it's not just a minor inconvenience, is it?
Not at all. Asthma attacks can be scary and even life-threatening. And then, of course, there's smoking.
That's a big one. The damage smoking does to the respiratory system is pretty well documented.
It's a major health hazard. Smoking damages those cilia, the tiny hairs that clean your airways. It overproduces mucus, which clogs things up. And it makes your lungs less elastic, making it harder to breathe.
And let's not forget the increased risk of lung cancer. It's a heavy price to pay.
Absolutely. Now, from the airways, let's move on to the circulatory system. This is your body's internal highway, transporting blood to every nook and cranny.
Okay, so we're talking blood vessels here.
Yeah.
And there are three main types, right?
All right. You've got arteries, veins, and capillaries, each with their own special job.
So arteries, those are the ones carrying blood away from the heart, right?
Exactly. They're like the expressways of your circulatory system, carrying oxygen-rich blood under high pressure.
And then the veins, those are the return routes, bringing the blood back to the heart.
Right. And because the blood pressure in veins is lower, they have these little one-way valves to prevent backflow. especially important in your legs, where gravity is working against the flow.
Makes sense. So what about capillaries? What makes them special?
Capillaries are the tiny, thin-walled vessels where the real action happens. They're like the side streets and alleys, delivering oxygen and nutrients to individual cells and picking up waste products.
So they're where the exchange between the blood and the body's tissues actually takes place.
Exactly. Now, of course, we can't forget the stars of the circulatory system,
Mm.
the blood cells. We've got red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets.
Let's start with the red ones. What's their primary role?
Red blood cells are the oxygen carriers. They contain a protein called hemoglobin, which binds to oxygen and gives blood its red color.
And they have that unique shape, kind of like a donut with the hole filled in.
That's right. They're incredibly efficient at carrying oxygen, thanks to that shape, and are also flexible, so they can squeeze through those tiny capillaries.
And what about those white blood cells? They're like the body's soldiers, right?
Exactly. They're part of the immune system, fighting off infections and keeping you healthy. There are different types of white blood cells, each with its own special weapons and tactics.
So some white blood cells might attack invaders directly, while others produce antibodies to target specific threats.
You got it. It's a complex and fascinating system. And then you have the platelets, which are crucial for clotting.
Yeah, when you get a cut, those platelets rush to the scene and plug the hole, stopping the bleeding.
They're like the first responders of your circulatory system. Now, just like with the respiratory system, things can go wrong in the circulatory system, too.
Right. The materials talked about heart attacks, strokes, and high blood pressure as major concerns.
A heart attack, or coronary thrombosis, happens when a blood clot blocks an artery supplying blood to the heart. It's a serious medical emergency.
And a stroke can be caused by a blockage or a bleed in an artery in the brain, often linked to high blood pressure. Both heart attacks and strokes can have devastating consequences.
Absolutely. And speaking of high blood pressure or hypertension, it's a silent killer. It means the force of blood against your artery walls is consistently too high, and this can damage your heart and blood vessels over time.
So it's really important to keep that blood pressure in check. Now, we've talked about the respiratory system and the circulatory system separately, but how do they work together? How does that oxygen get from the lungs to the rest of the body?
Well, it all comes back to those tiny capillaries in the lungs. Remember how we talked about diffusion? Well, oxygen from the alveoli diffuses into the capillaries where it binds to the hemoglobin in red blood cells.
So the circulatory system picks up the oxygen from the respiratory system and delivers it throughout the body. It's like a relay race.
Exactly. And this oxygen is crucial for cellular respiration, the process that powers our cells.
Right. Cells use oxygen to break down glucose, a type of sugar, and release energy. And one of the byproducts of this process is carbon dioxide,
Which then diffuses back into the blood and is transported back to the lungs to be exhaled. It's a beautiful continuous cycle.
So the respiratory system brings in the oxygen, the circulatory system delivers it, and then they work together to get rid of the carbon dioxide waste. And this is all happening all the time without us even thinking about it.
It really is amazing. Now, we've talked about getting oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. But what about all the other waste products our bodies produce?
That's where the excretory system comes in, right? The body's waste management team.
Exactly. And this system involves several key players, including the skin, lungs, kidneys, and the lower digestive tract. Each has its own role to play in getting rid of waste.
So the skin gets rid of some waste through sweat. The lungs exhale carbon dioxide and water vapor. The digestive tract eliminates solid waste. And then there are the kidneys.
The kidneys are like the filtration plants of your body. They filter waste products from the blood and produce urine.
And the sources you provided really emphasize that kidney function is crucial.
Absolutely. If the kidneys fail, waste products build up in the blood, and that can be life-threatening. And there are a number of things that can damage the kidneys, like toxins, diabetes, high blood pressure, and even certain medications.
So taking care of those kidneys is super important.
It really is. Now, the materials also talked about some other common excretory system issues, like bladder infections and kidney stones.
Bladder infections are more common in women because their urethra, the tube that carries urine from the bladder, is shorter.
And kidney stones are hard deposits that can form in the kidneys and cause excruciating pain when they try to pass.
Ouch. So to sum it all up, The respiratory system brings in the oxygen, the circulatory system delivers it, cells use it for energy and produce waste, and then the respiratory and excretory systems work together to get rid of that waste.
And all of this is happening constantly, keeping you alive and functioning. It's a remarkable symphony of interconnected systems.
It really is mind-blowing when you think about it. It's a testament to the incredible complexity and resilience of the human body. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought to ponder.
Consider this. How do even seemingly small changes in your lifestyle, like the quality of air you breathe or how much water you drink, affect these intricate systems?
What other seemingly automatic processes are happening inside you right now that you rarely think about?
Food for thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
See you next time.